You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group and co-hosts Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian from OptionPit.com, Andrew the Rock Lobster, Joe Benazzi from OptionPit.com, and Henry the FLOWMASTER SCHWARTZ from CBOE. The Option Block is brought to you by CBOE. When it comes to trading volatility, trust CBOE, the creator of the VIX Index, for in-depth and relevant information. CBOE's tools and services gives you up-to-date trade insights, analysis, and positions of VIX options and futures. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.cboe.com/VIX today to learn more. The views expressed herein are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of CBOE Global Markets Incorporated or any of its subsidiaries, collectively CBOE. The information provided is for general education and information purposes only. There are important risks associated with transacting in any of the CBOE products or any of the digital assets discussed here. Before engaging in any transactions in those products or digital assets, it is important for market participants to carefully review the disclosures and disclaimers contained at www.cboe.com/US_disclaimers. These products and digital assets are complex and are suitable only for sophisticated market participants. These products involve the risk of loss, which can be substantial and, depending on the type of product, can exceed the amount of money deposited in establishing the position. Market participants should put at risk only funds they can afford to lose without affecting their lifestyle. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again for the Thursday edition of the Option Block, what the cool kids call the old OB. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as from the ever-engaging, ever-educational Options Insider Radio Network. Reminding you, if you like what you hear, however you get the show, whatever platform, Audible, YouTube, iTunes, whatever you get the platform on through our mobile app, whatever they let you do, stars, ratings, reviews, likes, comments, whatever it is, throw something our way. It does help new folks continue to discover the content out there. And we've all seen there are new people discovering options all the time. They need some content to turn to. Give them a hand on whatever platform you're listening to. And of course, if you want to give yourself a hand, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. The only place to go to get access to all of the exclusive live stuff that we do, all the pro stuff we do there, the exclusive podcast feed that we have for you folks with 200 plus episodes now. Man, a lot of great stuff lurking over there on the pro side. And of course, great giveaways like the pro trading. Man, it's already coming up. A few more days, you got to give away the July crate. Man, I'm just slinging these things hot and heavy. I must like you folks. Theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go to get your name in the hat. Couple days left for the July crate, so get in there, listeners, while the getting is good. As we go around the horn, see what's cooking on the show today. First, let's go out to the quiet, the tranquil hamlet known as St. Charles, where we are joined once again by the uncleest of Mikes, Mr. Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management. Uncle Mike, welcome back to Ye Old Program, sir.
It is always a pleasure to be on Ye Old Program.
That it is indeed. As we go now farther south to another little hamlet of Texas known as Austin, getting bigger every day, where we are joined once again by the greasiest of meatballs on the Thursday show. A little switcheroo there. Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com. Mr. Meatball, welcome back to the show on a Thursday, sir.
Hey, good to be here. I'm excited. I don't usually get to talk to Henry, although I think I'm going to see him in a couple of months here in Chicago or in Austin. I sound like I'm from Austin, clearly. But yeah, I'm excited to be here. Glad to be here.
And speaking of Henry, it is the Thursday show, listeners, so we're rolling out the CBOE hot seat. And pleased to say that my 30 Delta that he would never make it out of Africa alive was not correct. We are joined once again by the FLOWMASTER himself, Mr. Henry Schwartz from CBOE. Mr. FLOWMASTER, welcome back from Safari, sir. You survived.
I'm happy to be back. It was an epic vacation. There were moments of danger, but most of them involved riding in a taxi through some African cities where the traffic makes New York look like a walk in the park.
Give us the highlights really quick. Where did you go, sir?
We started in Kenya, then we went to Tanzania, and then we went to Rwanda to see the gorillas. Rwanda's a gorgeous country. That was probably my favorite part of it. And we finished up on the beach in Zanzibar, where I listened to the last options block and then flew home. So I'm happy to be back and just jumping right back in. It's fun.
We know we have listeners all over the world. They have written in over the years from all types of locations. I'm not sure if the beaches of Zanzibar have ever come up before. I'll have to go check the list to see. So there you go, listeners. Spreading the reach far and wide. Glad to see the FLOWMASTER survived as we keep on rolling right on into the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the Trading Block.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Trading Block, the portion of the show where we break down what the heck is trading out there. And to celebrate the survival, the triumphant return of the FLOWMASTER, we got another day of green in the markets out there. Listen, I know, unexpected, deeply shocking to most of you out there. As we're kicking off the show, the S&P threatening 0.5% to the upside, the Dow up about 0.2%, and the NASDAQ up nearly a full percent. So clearly in the market now having a day to digest what Powell and company threw down and deciding that they like it, or at least that they don't care because we're rally-ho. Got some good news coming out this morning. McDonald's beating some expectations and others. Some little company called Oatly that I never heard of really screwing the pooch out there today. So I'm sure the Rock Lobster, wherever he is as happy as I am about that news. We'll talk about that more on Oddities on Friday, listeners. Good times to be had for all over there on the Oatly front. That means as we're kicking off the show, VIX coming in sub 13 handle 1290 when we commenced operations. Listeners, down nearly a full point from where it was on the Monday show. VVIX falling off a cliff, down 10 points to 83 now. Again, post-Fed, kind of expected this. VXX 2230 down about down about a full point, actually. UVXY 15 3/4 down about 3/4 of a point. SVIX continuing to explore new all-time highs all the time, now north of 30. Man, we were mocking those. What were they, SEP 35s? Thought they were ridiculous, and now they're a few points away. Up another point from the Monday level. Yeah, the all-time high was 3106 that it hit this morning. So, yeah, actually, I'll be talking to him on TWIFO coming up in a little bit, the Once and Future Dr. Vix. I was going to say wherever he is, but he'll be joining me soon. He is laughing all the way to the bank on pretty much his 100% holdings of SVIX now. UVIX, piece of crap, still 3.5, down about a third of a point. And VolQ, the NASDAQ vol, down a full point as well, down to about 16 3/4. So, as anticipated, taking a little bit of the vol air out of the balloon out there. Let's go around the horn. Let's start. He survived his trip to Africa, shocking many out there. So he earned his starting point on the show today. Mr. FLOWMASTER, sir, I know you missed us. I know you missed the options market. So what's been catching your eye since you left and, of course, this weekend today, sir?
Well, I got to say, I think that the market was up 8 out of the 10 days that I was gone. So that was kind of nice to see. And I did manage to trade from every country that I landed in just to say that I could. So Traded an SPX put spread from Rwanda. I figured I was one of the only people doing
one
that.
of the few, yeah.
I kind of expected that my brokerage platforms wouldn't even let me log in from these kind of funky places, but they did. So even traded a couple times from airplanes. I'll tell you the one amazing thing, well, many amazing things about Africa, but every country I was in, the cell service and data, I'm on T-Mobile for my cell phone, was kind of spotless, even in the middle of the Serengeti. It was wild.
Really?
So, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, we've basically had a lot of nice up moves. Volatility's muted. We got through another 25 bips in interest rates, and everybody seems to kind of be very happy with things. So, we also have a lot of meme kind of action taking place. So, I think there's just a lot. There's a lot going on. I mean, looks like today we'll hit about 50 million contracts. It's been a pretty active week, that's for sure.
Pretty active week indeed. I guess it just shows you got to go to Africa more often, sir, because when you're gone, the markets like it. They like when
Absolutely.
the FLOWMASTer is traveling abroad, slinging SPX put spreads from Rwanda.
How did those put spreads go, Henry? I'd imagine not well.
No,
I sell them?
I was a seller. Oh, come on, Mark. You know I'm a seller.
Oh, that's right.
He's not buying premium out there, not in Rwanda.
Yeah, he's a degenerate seller.
Exactly.
Of course.
Got to sell premium. It's the rule. You got to sell premium. When in Rwanda, do as the Rwandans do. Mr. Meatball, have you ever been to Rwanda? A, and B, what's catching your eye out there in the markets?
100 in the SPX cash, and they came in and faded it. And then we just had, while you were talking to Henry, markets sold off, had a huge push lower. A nice, call it a nice 15 handle drop in about 2 minutes. Pretty impressive. You got to wonder whether we're kind of topping out here. Vol, interestingly, we continue to see VIX and the triple Q kind of correlate. VIX seems to like it when the Qs are selling off and seems to catch a little bit of a bid when they are going straight up, which is interesting. We're seeing the Dow is about to have its 15th day in a row of going up. That is absolutely bananas. Henry, you're the data guy. When was the last time the Dow went up 15 straight days?
Oh, I'll find out for you.
1897.
I was just going to say, it was the 1800s. I just saw a headline flash by, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
1897 I saw earlier today.
So I'm going to go out on a limb and say that, heading into August, heading into things, might make some sense to put some hedges on. Just saying.
There you go. See, talking to Henry about his Rwandan put spreads just spooked the market. Out there, we shall see. You know who can always calm the market, talk it back off a cliff, and is also heavily armed with factoids about the Dow. It is Uncle Mike TOSAW. Uncle Mike, sir, what's catching your eye in, as we're talking still an Uncle Mike type of day? Maybe that'll change, though, sir.
Yeah, we might be getting a little bit frothy if they're busting out the 1897 statistics on the news, financial news media. Have to admit that kind of does get a little concerning for things to the upside. So, what's really catching my eye today, we continue to get the good news earnings announcements. The one stock that stuck out to me the most today was Meta, and that's up over 5% on the day today. And it was really not that long ago when I remember talking about Meta on this show, and this thing, the metaverse, that Mark Zuckerberg wanted to really put a lot of money into, and whether it's going to be good or bad still remains to be seen. But I remember talking on this show, and I'm just looking at a chart here. In November of 2022, Meta, still have a hard time saying it myself, Meta was at a low of $88 per share. So the movement in Meta from November of last year to today, we've gone from 88.09 at a low to 316 at a high. That's a pretty big move in a single stock, that's for sure. So with today, watching it do the move with which it's had, up just under 6% on the day. Curious to see what resistance would be for it. The all-time highs, that appears, were in 2021, the 384 level. So you could make a case to say it still has some room to go upward. But for right now, it's been it's had quite the move, to say the least. Also, Microsoft earnings were good news theoretically in the earnings with Microsoft, but kind of not derailed Microsoft, but just stopped it from I guess it put a little bit of a brake on Microsoft as it was going. So we were in the 360s. It's back in the 330s right now. And with that one, it looks like, to me, it just kind of come back to reality a little bit. I mean, just with the move with Microsoft, one of the biggest companies in the history of planet Earth, earlier this year it was at the low 200s. It's gone up over 50% on the year to date, or from trough to peak, if you will. And that's another big mover. So we're getting a lot of just ridiculous moves again. And my concern is that we got a lot of ridiculous moves in 2021, and 2022, things kind of came back down to earth, if you will. So I think I agree with Mark, and that's you might want to consider, if you're in any of these names, and I just named a couple, putting on a hedge might not be a bad idea. But who knows? Maybe Microsoft could go to 530 in a couple days. Who knows? But for the time being, caution I don't think is necessarily a bad idea at this point.
When Uncle Mike is preaching caution, then perhaps we need to be careful out there, listeners. Intriguing stuff. Let's see what we got cooking out there in the old markets today. Let's start on the index front, and who knows, maybe this a little bit of the worm turning, maybe that will kick some VIX paper into gear, because we're not seeing that right now. Let's fire up the old trade alert machine, see what kind of numbers we have right there. VIX, respectable, 307,000 contracts. I kind of use 250,000 contracts as a bit of my baseline here, listeners. If we're north of that, then that's at least respectable. If you're hanging out there or below, you're kind of having a bit of a lackluster day. The ADV for VIX continues to move in the wrong direction, 682. Then again, we are facing that seasonality right now. We're in July, heading into August, so not exactly the banger time of the year for VIX paper. SPY, though, saying, hold my beer, VIX kid. 5.4 million contracts already. Usually we see SPY around 4.5, maybe somewhere in that range right now, so nearly 1 million contracts north of that. So pretty robust for SPY. The ADV 7.08 million is going to hit that today. The S also looking very robust. I'm guessing some 0-day flying fast and furious out there in the S today. 1.9 million contracts on the tape for the S. The ADV 2.6 million. I'm looking at the top 20 most actives in the S. Oh, you know what? The bottom 2, so the top 18, all expired today. The bottom 2 expired tomorrow. So there you go. A couple non-0-day contracts floating into our top 20 in the SPX right now. And if you go out 24 hours, it's still all of it. Small caps, 414,000. So they're looking decent. The ADV has come off a bit, obviously 851. So it seems like it might be on pace to hit that. And the Qs, 2.33 million already. The ADV, 3.1 million. So the Qs off to the races out there. Let's see if single names are keeping pace, listeners out there. And the answer is kind of yes. Again, for the single names, we usually use 300K as the benchmark, listeners, and we're pretty much right there. 296,000 contracts. That gets us to our old friend Neo. I mean, not that long ago, we were talking here on the show about, it seemed like everybody was loading up on some upside in these quote-unquote cheapy other EV manufacturers outside of Tesla, cheapy from a stock price, obviously. And they're feeling their oats today. Lucid up 30% in the past 5 days. Lucid. Neo up 30% in the past 5 days, looking at 296,000 contracts today and the number 10 spot. This is the second time in the last 2 shows we've seen Neo back in the top 10. It was a perennial top 10er. Then the stock kind of fell out of bed down to $7. That was back in the May time frame. So since then, it has almost doubled. It got down to $7 exactly. It hit $13.87 this morning. So basically it has doubled from its May low. So a nice little run for NEO. Number 9, the king of the memes back in our top 10 yet again, AMC 423. So we jumped from 296 to 423 listeners. So we are banging out there today. AMC giving up the ghost after all that upside we were talking about on the Monday show that went up on Friday. Some potential skullduggery going on out there in AMC. Giving up a lot of that ghost today, down to 460, off about half a buck, and good for 423,000 contracts. Number 8, good old softy. Uncle Mike just kind of regaled us on this one. 476,000 contracts for them. Giving up about a point today, our percentage point, I should say, a little over 3 points total. 334.62. Their recent high was 366, so coming off about 30 points. And he's right. This seems like these earnings finally brought him back down to earth a little bit. There was so much hyperbolic nonsense about how the cloud was going to transform everything. And then when you see the actual numbers, you realize it's not really a material contributor to their bottom line yet, and won't be for some time. So all this breathless enthusiasm for AI, it seemed like it kind of pumped the brakes when it came to Microsoft a little bit. Then right behind it, we have the other offender, the two that really made up the vanguard of the AI assault on the markets that started a couple of months ago. It's Alphabet, number 7, 478,000. They're doing the opposite. They're rallying today, up about $2, trading nearly 132 right now. Coming in at number 6 is the first half of the chip zone. It's AMD, 488,000. They're popping today, up $3.50. So nobody told them about Microsoft relaxing a little bit today. They're taking the bit in their teeth and running. 113.60 is where they're hanging out right now, up again about $3.50. Good for 488,000 contracts today. Number 5, yes, the fruit company. Back down our list. You can tell it's earnings season when things are kicking Apple to the curb today. Apple, 610,000 contracts in the number 5 spot, up about 70 cents, 195.20, about $3 away from its 52-week high out there. So interesting times out there in Apple. The market still liking it because Apple is still green, at least for right now. Number 4, we got the Amazonians coming in here. 620,000 contracts. Amazon up 2.25 today, trading 130 and about a half as well. So intriguing stuff for the Amazonians. Number 3, you knew it had to be here somewhere. These days, it's hanging out usually in the top couple. Today, it's number 3. It's NVIDIA, the other half of the chip zone, up 819,000 contracts on the tape today. Wow, up $16.15, 470.70 out there. So intriguing stuff. Apparently, Kathy Wood talking more about NVIDIA out there, something driving it. More buyers than sellers at the end of the day, popping pretty hard out there today. So maybe they're getting all the money that's fleeing Microsoft right now, just piling into NVIDIA. Number 2, Uncle Mike was just talking about them as well. The artist formerly known as Facebook, now known as Meta, 916,000, up $16. 314.5 is where they were trading. They got up to 325 almost and a half today. My goodness. What a day for freaking Meta. Yeah, I guess the folks liked their numbers, saying the dramatic turnaround continues out there in Meta. All they had to do was fire everybody and then launch a Facebook competitor that got a bunch of traffic right away that seems to be falling off quite a bit, and people like it. VR headset as well. All those 3 things, enough to really bring the stock back from the $88. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago we were talking about Meta in the $88 range. Listeners, now $314. We were laughing at that person who bought the Nove 200s last year and got completely run over. If you listen to Options Oddities, you know they kept rolling and they ended up doing quite well. But it seemed like it was just a disaster across the board. And here they are back again. And then number 1, listeners, you know what it is. Takes a lot to dethrone the king. It's Tesla, 1.43 million contracts, off about $1.25, trading $263 and change right now. They got hit with another downgrade recently. Some news that other auto manufacturers are getting together to make a rival to the supercharger network. A lot of things lurk. And it's a day that ends in Y. There's always news driving Tesla somewhere, listeners. Again, good for 1.43 million contracts today. Let's look really quickly at the earnings front because we got some hot and heavy names popping off this week. We had Domino's upbeats on Monday. We had big ones on Tuesday. We had Dow, GM, 3M back-to-back. Say that 5 times fast. Alaska Airlines, good old Softy, and Alphabet, and Visa. Yesterday we have AT&T. We had Boeing, our friends across the street for a little bit longer. Coke, We had Hilton and Meta and Chipotle and eBay and Mattel. How much Barbie money did they make? I guess we'll find out. And then today we had Mickey D's for the bells. They blew the doors off. Southwest, not looking great. I think their costs were up a little bit more than anticipated. MasterCard, Crocs, rubber shoes fame, Ford, Intel, Roku, and so many more. Look in here. We still are waiting for the updated earnings move results, and earnings season reports. You folks can check those out for yourselves the second they are released over there at theoptionsinsider.com. Click on the Options News and Articles tab to begin your journey. Right now, our most recent season update is from Monday, and the season at that point, with 70 names reporting, was looking at a pretty banger, 150%. Spoiler alert, it's going to come down from there, listeners. Our long-term average right now is right around 98%. We've been tracking these for quite a while, going back before the pandemic. So that average is interesting. Obviously, we're going to come in from 150%, but interesting stuff to watch. Stay tuned to theoptionsinsider.com. That's the place you'll see that data. The second we have it, listeners. As we keep on rolling, it is time to get weird. It is time to get wild. It is time for the Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Odd Block, the portion of the show where we get weird, we get wild. Speaking of weird and wild, the Meatball has to hop off in a few minutes. So before you go, Mr. Meatball, sir, are there any odd trades that you're watching you want us to talk about today? And what are you keeping
the S&P just tanked, but yeah, there's the one I'm looking at. I'll stick around through Odd Block, but is GSM. This was one you probably didn't catch. Ferroglobe PLC. You ever heard of it? I had not.
I check it every morning with my coffee.
Yeah. So they have earnings coming up on the 14th. Somebody bought 3,000 of the AUG5 calls for 34 cents. And then yesterday, and I'm sure Henry caught this, Medtronic was going insane. MDT. We had buyers of October 95 calls and September 95 calls. Basically buying everything they could. Which caught my eye. Those were the two kind of huge orders that were catching my eye today.
Mr. Flowmaster, any thoughts on those, including everyone's new favorite? And I'm looking at these right now. You're right, 3,000 of the AUG5s going up for 34 cents this morning in GSM. The stock's off about a dime today, so not looking great. Actually, they bought them when the stock was lower. The stock was 503, so maybe they caught the bottom here. Mr. Flowmaster, are you a fan of these out there? Are you a fan of Ferroglobe, sir?
I'm looking at it. I don't know. I mean, that 3,000 lot at 34 cents on the Amex, it was a cross. And when I see a cross, you never quite know. I mean, it sure was the top end of a pretty wide market. So I guess it was probably a buyer, but that doesn't excite me that much. The Medtronic is definitely interesting. I mean, that opened like almost 40,000 95 strike calls in SEP and OCT. They're not doing anything for the buyer yet, but I didn't catch that one because I was still flying yesterday. But the Medtronic one, I might play around in.
Yeah, whenever you see cross, it's always you obviously take it with a bit of a grain of salt. You know, you see that there, you're like, oh, what else is going on behind the scenes, right? But intriguing stuff. I also saw, Mr. Flowmaster, that what you were keeping an eye on today is also something that came across our radar, a newcomer to the show and indeed to the network. This is Beauty Health Company, ticker symbol SKIN, SKIN. I don't know how we haven't talked about skin before, but we shall correct that oversight now, listeners. Skin trading $8.50 even right now, up about 12 cents. So a nice day for them, popping about 1.5%. On the year, listeners, a year ago, it was trading $13. And then they came for it. They drove it down to about $8.40. That was on end of the year, December 28th. Then they rallied it again through April, got up to about $13.70. And then that's pretty much been straight down ever since. Got to a low of $7.25. Seemed like that might have been just about a week ago. And then since then, they've rallied it to about $8.50. So Intriguing stuff out here for skin. Mr. Flowmaster, I know what our Eye of Sauron found. What did you spot out there in skin today, sir?
That one did show up on my radar. Well, mostly because it was like call volume 40 times normal and the put volume was 0. But, I wanted to point out, Sebastian mentioned a pretty hard dump in the S&P futures right as the show started. It looks like that was coming from some sort of big old sell-off in Japan. It looks like the Nikkei went down. DXJ, which is one of the ETFs I watch on, it was down almost $1 from 84 to 83 in a single minute, and that's kind of pulled the S&P down with it. So maybe something happening overseas. But back to skin, somebody put some skin in the game. Looks like they bought almost all of it was in the August 9 calls, like 97% of the volume, almost 9,000 of them now. And basically they bought about 600 or 700 for 45 cents. Just before 11:30 when the stock was around 829, and then they finished up with almost 3,200 paying 50 cents in a couple of big sweeps. And that CBOE open close data that I mentioned sometimes helps us to see for sure if it's a customer buyer, and in this case it was a customer opening buyer. So they're up to about 6,000 so far. Almost 9,000. It's probably more than just one customer, but I think one customer is probably the bulk of it. It's about $500,000 worth of upside calls in this name. So that one actually, I'm already long some of the stock because I got long when I saw it print. And like I said earlier, we are seeing a lot of kind of meme stock behavior again. Not quite as rampant as it was in 2021, but there's plenty of pockets of funky stuff going on. So that's what I've been really kind of looking around for, some of these cheap names that people might be pouring some money into, whether it's warranted or not. They can be good for some short-term moves.
Speaking of some short-term moves, we got one going on right now today in Tupperware Brands, ticker symbol TUP, TUP, up $1.12. Or 58% today, trading $3.02 now. My goodness. A year ago, though, it was trading $7, and it got as high as $12.86 in August of last year before they crushed it. We did talk about it back earlier this year. We talked about April 2s, I believe. Those are obviously didn't go out well, but right now, $3. If they had only bought a few more months out there. Interesting stuff. Mr. Flowmaster, what was catching your eye? And looking back, what is catching your eye out there in Tupperware today, sir?
Well, so I remember that show. It was around the middle of April, and you guys were laughing at me because it was like $1.50 stock, and I believe they're kind of financially, they might be kind of bankrupt, but there was some heavy call buying. I got long some stock and was selling some. I think those $2 calls were trading for 15 to 20 cents, the 2-strike calls. So anyway, I'm still long some stock because I keep all my terrible purchases, as you know. And in the last 5 days, Tupperware is up from 60 cents to $3. Now I'm looking at the borrow rate on it, and it's about 70% implied, and there's nothing available at some of the brokers that I keep an eye on for the actual locate. So this is it feels a little bit to me like a kind of speculative soup. But again, it's you can play around and catch some pretty nice moves in these cheap names, and I'm happy about this one for sure.
Yeah, we were. It was the April 13th show, and we were talking about the stock was about $1.67, and the April 2 calls were going up for 15 cents. Henry, at the time, you liked the buy right, buying the stock for $1.67 and then selling the 15 calls. If you did that on the stock side, the stock went out at $1.32. So you didn't quite break even on that one, but you know what? Your patience paid off, sir, because today you're getting paid.
Exactly. So I am trying to get out of most of the stock, but yeah, it's kind of a fun one. So, and then another one that showed up today, which I think was we talked about last time I was on, so a few weeks ago, is Goodyear Tire. Another one with heavy volume. I think in Goodyear, it's a little bit more balanced between calls and puts, but no, actually, no, it's not. it's 21,000 calls and 780 puts. So that's another one. And actually, the one thing about Goodyear, and it's the August 17 and 17 halves, they're seeing buyers. Stock's at 1620. Some big orders, like an 8,000 lot they paid 50 cents for in a sweep when the stock was 1618. So stock's a little bit higher than that, but it hasn't moved much. But that one also has a put call skew that's kind of inverted now. So the calls are a little bit bid more than the puts, which is kind of we see in these names where there's just heavy call buying.
Yes, Goodyear Tire. We have a lot to pay off. Before we get there really quickly, Mr. Meatball, anything to add on the Tupperware front, sir?
Yeah, looks hard to borrow, looks short squeezy. So, go long at your own risk at this point. Henry, you've done real well. Maybe you, you're probably getting really good juice to sell puts. You could dump your stock and sell puts.
True. Actually, in some of these names, even in GameStop, when that insanity was happening, one of the nice trades was selling puts, because even when the stock came back down 50%, the volatility.
The vol came in so hard. Yep.
Exactly.
So, Mr. Meatball, does this qualify as a squeezy McSqueezerstein to you?
It is a squeezy McSqueezenstein for sure.
There we go. We need to have official clarification from you before we can label anything thus. As we get on out to Goodyear Tire, you know the deal, listeners. Ticker symbol GT. Trading right now, $16 and about 20 cents, up about a dime. It's had a nice run over the last month, listeners, up about 16%, about 2.25. So looking pretty good. Before I get to today's paper, let's look back really quickly on what we were talking about. The last time we talked about it when Henry was on with us, a little over a month ago, June 15th, he was talking about a ton of call paper in Goodyear Tire. It was 16 times normal volume. A lot of near-dated paper focused on the 14 strikes in June. We talked about those already. Large sweeps paying 44 to 45 cents also, though, for the July 15 calls. And that's what we're going to pay off today. Obviously, those were looking pretty good. The stock closed an expiration for June, on June expiration, $13.10. And then coming into last week expiration for the July options, $15.70 is where the stock went out. There were still roughly 6,000 of the July 15 calls open. Obviously, a ton of paper went back and forth, so it's hard to say exactly whether that's the same couple of thousand that we initially profiled. But either way, there was a ton of paper open on that strike going into it. So if that was the case, if that was the same folks, they got a nice little run on the calls, and they're still holding on to some stock, which is still looking pretty good. And then fast forward to today, we got somebody keeping the party alive here in Goodyear Tires. 8,000 of the AUG 17s had gone up. Paper lifting the offer for 50 cents this morning when the stock was exactly here, so the stock hasn't moved. Worth noting, they do get a little bit of an earnings pop here. They have August 2nd, so next week we'll see some earnings here. But intriguing stuff. Mr. Flowmaster, this was your call early on. You were the first on this Goodyear Tire tip. So what are your thoughts here on, looks like the Goodyear Julys worked out as well. Not just, the Junes were kind of dicey, but the Julys worked out. B, do you think they got out? Do you think they rode them into stock? And then C, what do you think about the calls going up today, sir?
I didn't see him unwind anything. So I think that, this is obviously a big account that likes to kind of trade some chunky positions. Like it seems like the size they like to hit is, between 5 and 10,000 contracts at a time. So, and just seeing that implied vol's up like 6 points in there. So, which is a decent amount, puts it around 53%. So, I think this is a name that's kind of going to stay very active. This is enough kind of persistent flow to keep people paying attention, and, somebody sees it, maybe they disagree with kind of the directional nature of things they see, and that's an opportunity to fade it, and basically sell things on the offer. And that's, that we love to see that, because that's really where you kind of get some two-way action.
Mr. Meatball, same question for you, sir. Obviously, a lot of paper flying fast and furious in Goodyear Tire. Some of it, the July stuff, paying off. Got more going up in August, sir. What are your thoughts on all this Goodyear call paper?
Every time I jump on call paper in Goodyear, it's the top. So I'm hoping it's happened to me twice. So I'm staying. It's on my do not trade list right now. We'll see whether that changes, but. There's an activist investor in this one, and it gets this thing's been heating up. Some claims of mismanagement there. That's part of what pushed these activists into the trade. So, one to keep an eye on.
Hard to believe back in March of this year, listeners, we were talking about somebody loading up on the October 7 puts. They bought 10,000 for 30 cents when the stock was about $10.50. So they were not feeling all this upside love. Obviously, they probably have some stock, so they're not too sad about this. But still, a 10,000 30-cent lot's going to come back to bite you. Obviously, they have till October, so they got a little bit more time on these bad boys. But interesting how the worm can turn. Then just a month or two later, we were talking about all this upside call love. So intriguing how the worm can turn out there, listeners, as it is time for us to turn away from the odd block and into the mail block.
It's time to take your seat on the All-Star panel as we read your emails, tweets, Facebook messages, website comments, and much more. It's time for the mail block.
All right, welcome to the mail block, the portion of the show where you folks take the reins, your questions, your comments, your insights. So, Mr. Meatball, I know you got to run, so if you have anything else you want to leave us with, what you're watching for the rest of the week, and then B, if you have a vote in our poll, what is your preferred crypto options exposure for securities accounts? BITO, Riot, Coinbase, or Mara? Have at it, sir.
I think I said this on Monday, Coinbase, and I would hold that opinion. What I'll say is, keep an eye on S&P today. We might break 4,600. Feels like they're really going to pull the rug here. I don't know exactly what just happened. I know Henry saying the Nikkei went nuts, but somebody hit the sell button. And Apple earnings next week. That's on the card. That's going to be the Apple and Amazon next week are going to be, I think, big drivers.
There you go. And if folks want to check out what you got cooking, sir, where should they go? What should they do?
Go to optionpit.com.
There you go.
Check us out.
Optionpit.com, the place to go, listeners. And you're right, seeing the S&P a little bit lighter out there. It doesn't seem like with this recent sell-off, like today is going to be the day where we go back. We were at 4,600 earlier, not so much right now. But we shall see, listeners. Again, the session is still young. As is our question of the week, though it's getting a little bit longer in the tooth now as we're heading into Thursday. Our question of the week: there are many ways for options traders to get crypto exposure in their securities accounts. Mara, Riot, Coinbase, and BITO, all popular choices. But what is your weapon of choice for crypto options exposure? Again, gave you four choices: BITO, Riot, Coinbase, and Mara. Mr. Flowmaster, we haven't had a chance to pick your brain on this one, so we'll start there. What are your thoughts on your preferred vehicle for trading crypto options in a securities account? And then B, what do you think our audience is voting for, sir?
I bet you that they like the mining stocks more than the BITO, which I believe holds Bitcoin futures. I actually have a little bit of both, so I kind of like to spread it around. But I bet the listeners are going to pick something like Mara.
Is that your pick as well?
Yeah, I like Mara, and I have another one, Hive, which I think is another mining company.
Oh, there you go. See, that's what you said. We also said if you don't see your favorite, write it in. So you're writing in for Hive here. Interesting. Haven't got to write in for that one yet, but interesting. Mr. Uncle Mike, I know this is your favorite sector, so we're going to spend the rest of the show on it, if you don't mind. You probably don't have a choice. If you have one, have at it. What do you think our listeners are choosing, though, sir?
Yeah, I really don't have a choice. I'll say Coinbase. That seems like it would be the popular thing. That's probably what I would do if I really wanted to get into it.
All right. And Mr. Flowmaster, looks like you got your finger on the pulse of our audience. I thought BITO was going to run away with it. It's a more direct tracking vehicle, and the options flow is pretty good. But, Mara taking it right now, 35.2% listeners. So the Flowmaster, even though he was out on the beaches of Zanzibar and the forests and jungles of Rwanda, still has his fingers on the pulse of the audience. 35.2% for Mara. Coinbase coming in at number 2, 29.6%. Riot coming in number 3, 18.5%. 16.7% only for BITO. So BITO taking up the rear. That is surprising to me, given how much interest we have. People talking about it to us all the time. How the ADV was pushing 100K not too long ago. It's fallen off now. But intriguing stuff out there for some of these. Let's just pull up really quickly out of curiosity. Let's go to the old FlowMaster machine again. What is the ADV for Mara now? Oh, yeah, Mara looking pretty good, 257,000 contracts. So you could do worse than slinging a little bit of Mara right now. Let's see how Coin is holding up. 290. So, yeah, if you're looking at from pure options flow, they do have good old BITO beat Riot right now, $1.60. So, flow-wise, BITO is actually in the rear of all those, which is kind of interesting. Also interesting, we had a listener point out, Blue Lobster is his name. He says, BITO, owning calls on BITO for over a month is a seriously bad idea. It's been paying a huge dividend lately. You can scalp a week or two, but be aware. You know, this is an interesting point. I wanted to bring it up on this show. We talked about it yesterday on Options Bootcamp as well. For anyone out there who is thinking about the calls, and I've never really dabbled in buying calls out here for a lot of different reasons, but he makes a good point. And I did look it up, what the dividend yield is on this thing. And the dividend yield, he's correct, is actually pretty aggressive. As of yesterday, it was about 14.25%. They had paid out about 2.25% in dividends over the past year. So that is, again, another argument for perhaps not owning the calls, maybe looking at perhaps buy rights instead. The downside of the buy rights now, not a lot of juice for the calls, especially with BITO volume, or I should say BITO volatility being pretty anemic. I think you're in the first percentile for the year for vol or somewhere along those lines. So you're not getting a ton of juice for those, but I don't know, Mr. Uncle Mike, does that change your perception of it at all? Paying a 14.25% dividend yield just to hold the stock you hate, sir?
Yeah, it does change my perception. I actually like it even less now. If there's someone that's willing to pay 14% in a dividend, there's a reason they're willing to pay 14% in a dividend. I stand by my URL name. That's still for sale, by the way.
There you go. Hit him up over there at unclemike.com to find his Bitcoin really sucks. .com. We asked you last week, paying off some of our options oddities paper here on the show. We said, hey, we've seen a lot of interesting options trades. We can't decide which ones we like the most or really the least, so we'll let you folks decide. Gave you three choices. The NKLA AUG 5s for 37 cents. Again, the stock was less than $2.50 at the time. The RIVN AUG 40s for 40 cents. The stock was decently below 25, I think around 22 and change at the time. Or the Keurig Dr. Pepper October 33s for 55 cents. Those are the ones, as you recall, if you listen to Options Oddities listeners, I liked the Rock Lobster liked. I tried to leg into some stuff in Keurig. We missed it because the show is right around the time of the market closing. But man, Keurig popping again today. Geez. But you folks like the RIVN AUG 40s for 40 cents, 54.3%. 28.3% making the correct choice, the Keurig Dr. Pepper October 33s, which this stock up $1.40 again today, trading almost $34 right now. My goodness, this thing was like 31 and change when we first profiled this. So Keurig Dr. Pepper, the clear winner of this. NKLA AUG 5s for 37 cents. They came in the last place with 0.2%. Let's look really quickly. NKLA selling off today, so those are not the winner chicken dinner right now. I don't think RIVN is going to be, but Keurig Dr. Pepper, my goodness. They are on fire out there. My goodness. Man, that's another painful. Maybe we should move Options Oddities a little bit an hour away from the close so I can get more of these trades off before the close. Interesting stuff here. It looks like we got our chat, Mr. Flowmaster. The live chat is happy that you survived. Option God saying, I'm happy to hear that the Flowmaster survived. So there you go. Our audience is happy for you. Options Queen says, yes, sounds like a great trip. She also wants to know, we're talking about dividends for BITO. She wants to know, can you scan for dividend yield in trade alerts, sir?
That's a good question. I don't actually think we have that as the scan because we kind of focus more on activity than the underlying. But you can do a scan in LiveVol Pro for dividend yield. So I would say check out LiveVol Pro if she's interested. You know, it's funny that BITO dividend, because I have some BITO, I had to look it up recently. I'm like, why is this thing paying a dividend, right? It's not a company that has any revenue, and it has to do with the fact that it's futures based, right? And every time they roll those futures forward, they're taking profits if Bitcoin's been going higher. So that is far from a stable dividend. It's only stable basically when the futures are going higher, and every time they roll them, they're taking some profits. If we were basically trading lower, that dividend will turn off just as fast as it turned on.
that goes away. Yes, it is a function of the role. You're right, but it is intriguing stuff and something certain to note. I guess a little bit of added juice for your upside out there in BITO if you were so inclined. We got a little time. Let's see if we can get. Here we go. This is an interesting one from Thomas. This came in, I think, while you were traveling, Mr. Flowmaster. He says, I know Mark was talking about the trade of the day from Trade Alert, and he puts in parentheses, and Andrew was super excited about getting it as well. Yeah, it's our email, our trade of the day email, kind of showing all the winners of the day. It's kind of fun. He says, have you been using it, and are there any insights to share with it or share from it with the rest of us? Yeah, this is pretty cool. Henry, this is your newsletters. Maybe I'll let you take it first, but it's kind of just breaking down some of the raw winners on the day that you're seeing out there in Trade Alert. Have you seen any interesting nuggets from it that you want to share with the rest of the class, sir?
Sure. No, it's funny. I did put that query together because I was interested in at least having something to talk about. And it's I mean, you know how it works. It simply is taking every option trade that created new open interest and was not part of a complex order, and then it's just doing a mark-to-market between trade price and end of the day, and then just ranks them. So I can see the top, 50 or 100 most profitable trades. There's a lot of caveats to that, right? Sometimes trades are tied to a hedge or something like that. Although in this case, I think we limit it just to sweeps, just to be as sure as we can that these are directional opening trades. We haven't done any data mining on it. I think it actually would be very interesting, kind of in a like a high level view. Are the biggest P&L trades? Are they basically call buyers or put buyers? And what's if you took maybe a distribution of what the delta of the options that are being traded is, you might actually see some interesting things once you have enough data. Because any calls bought in Apple on a day where Apple goes up $3 or $4 are going to be very profitable, right? But you've got high delta calls and you've got low delta calls, and you've got calls that are melting away if they're short-term options. So we haven't done any data mining on it yet, but I am going to put it down on the list of things to kind of play around with, because just the concept of, there's almost 5 to 6 million trades taking place daily, and you can effectively run P&L on every one of them and try to learn, get some insights into, which trades are doing well and which trades, aren't. Our short-term trades where the big P&L activity is, versus the longer-term trades. There's a kind of a lot of ways to slice and dice it, which is what I love about options data most of all.
And there's a lot of ways to slice and dice what's coming up in the market, so let's get to it. A little bit of the old Around the Block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to Around the Block, the portion of the show where we tell you what we're keeping an eye on until our next episode on the old Monday show. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, we shall start with you. What are you keeping an eye on as we head into the weekend and prepare for the Monday episode, sir?
Well, I think the first thing we need to do is all chip in and buy Henry a plane ticket back to Africa. Ever since he started talking about an hour ago, we lost 30 points in the S&P.
He killed it.
Blaming it on something overseas, but I think it's him.
See, yeah, all you got to do is go back on safari, sir, hit the beaches again, and all is right with the market, sir.
I'm happy to go back.
So anyway, good to have you back on a serious note. But I think just what we're watching right now, 4,600's a barrier, and we topped it earlier this morning. We dropped, and then we made a run at it shortly before the show, and we are going below it now. So watching that, having a little bit of a sell-off in bonds today, continuing to monitor that. And at some stage with bond values doing what they've been doing, I think we've not come down much this year, but we're kind of right at the same spots that we started the year at in the bond world. Continuing to watch that just to see the overall market reaction to what the Fed is doing. And that's what I'm watching right now.
Mr. Flowmaster, same question for you, sir. As you're getting back in the swing of things, killing markets with your return here to the States, what are you keeping an eye on until next week, sir?
Well, we do have a lot of fun earnings in the next week or two. So, I think everybody will be talking about names like Apple, but we got Starbucks, we got Uber, Robinhood also, which I like to pay attention to just because it's in the industry. So watching earnings, and I do agree. Everybody's kind of looking at this market and going, man, we've come up so fast and feels like we're overbought. And markets never do what you think they're going to do just because it all makes sense. So, I basically will just kind of be watching for anything to happen. But like I said, I'm also playing around with, keeping a closer eye on these, $3, $4, $5 stocks for kind of some of this super speculative stuff as well, because those can be nice trading opportunities as long as you kind of are very careful about your sizing.
All right, everybody, that's going to do it for us today on the old OB. But don't worry, if you want more, you're listening live on the old Pro Chat. Stay tuned. I'll be back in a little bit with the once future and now present. He did tweet out the picture of the document, so he is the now present Dr. Vix, talking about a little bit of, I think, energy vol. A lot of energy on the movers and shakers over there, so stay tuned for that. Come in a little bit, listeners. But before we get there, of course, if you're listening after the fact, just hit next on your podcast device of choice. Should be hanging out there waiting for you. Let's go around the horn. Mr. Uncle Mike, we'll start with you, sir. If folks want to reach out, get a little bit of the old Uncle Mike goodness in their lives, where should they go? What should they do?
For some Uncle Mike goodness, check out my website, stcharleswealth.com. If you'd like to talk with a financial advisor and talk options with the same person, there's not a lot of us out there. Feel free to follow me on Twitter at Mike TOSAW, TOSAW. I try to put out as much content as I can.
That's a good point. It's all the same person. You don't have to get transferred to the options guy at a different desk at St. Charles. It's all Uncle Mike. So reach out to him. You want to talk about crypto? He's your guy. You want to talk about calls? He's your guy. You want to talk about the forests and jungles of Rwanda? He's your guy. Uncle Mike TOSAW at stcharleswealth.com is the place.
I'd forward that one over to Henry.
Okay. And give him a follow on Twitter as well, at Mike TOSAW, all one word. Mr. FLOWMASTER, sir, you guys are putting out a lot of cool stuff. You got the trade of the day. You got that cool kind of free newsletter you're putting out now with kind of daily updates and some of the highlights from all your vast array of SIBO data. You got a lot of cool stuff cooking. So where should folks go if they want to check it all out?
Just head to SIBO.com/RMA, which is Risk and Market Analytics, which Trade Alert is one of the spectacular tools that we have there. Also, Live Vol, as I mentioned, if you want to play with some of the more fundamental scans. And you can also follow us on Twitter. Option Alert is our handle. And I did just notice, I think that Elon broke the API access, so our auto tweets are not working as well as they used to, which is annoying. But I'm about to throw out a few tweets right now, and I'll even mention the Options Insider because it's such a great site.
Because you're nice like that. Check them out over there. You know where to go, listeners. CBOE.com, the place to go to begin your journey to the dark side. Our journey will continue in a little bit. If you're listening live, stay tuned. We'll be back in a little bit with This Week in Futures Options. Then back again tomorrow, noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern. For volatility views, we'll have, I think, Scott Nations joining us on that show. And then after that, with the Rock Lobster for all things options oddities to close out our week on the pro side. Remember, if you want to join us for that show and for all the other fun stuff we do live, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. Then see you back here again on Monday, another episode of The Option Block. Stay safe out there, everybody.
The Option Block is brought to you by SIBO. When it comes to trading volatility, trust SIBO, the creator of the VIX Index, for in-depth and relevant information. SIBO's tools and services gives you up-to-date trade insights, analysis, and positions of VIX options and futures. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.cboe.com/VIX today to learn more. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's MIXLR.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/The Options Insider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.